Ask Mike, brought to you by the Stadium Shop on Razorback in Fayetteville.
Welcome into this week's Ask Mike. Happy Monday. And of course, we're coming off a weekend where it was great for softball, Mike, and not so great for baseball. So I have a feeling this stack of questions has got a nice mix of both. So let's get started. Our first comment is from L.R. Tackett, who says, wow, the softball Razorbacks are the real deal. They just destroyed the field in the Fayetteville Regional.
Yeah, destroyed is a good word. Scored 26 total runs in the 3 games, gave up 5, but only 3 earned runs. They had that 2-run error in the second game with Oregon. The pitching was just fabulous. How about Mary Half? She pitches 2 complete games, gives up, honestly, 1 earned run in those 2 games. You can't get much better than that.
Yeah.
And then Shanice Dels, she gives up the 2 runs, but it could have been no runs. She just had that big lead going in the top of the 9th and admitted she lost focus and gave up a 2-run homer. So the pitching was great. The only drama was maybe in that stretch in Game 2 against Oregon where they had a 3-run lead and then the error caused them to be tied and everybody's getting uneasy for a couple of innings. But the thing about this team that you begin to realize is they're just an inning away from exploding. They have big innings.
Yeah.
They hit home runs, 7 home runs in the regional. They just exploded and suddenly it's just over.
Yeah.
You know, so there's no drama there. Now the good thing is, and we talked about it last week, the possibility of Texas coming in, and we thought, it's probably not going to happen. Well, it did happen.
Yeah.
So you couldn't ask for anything better except for ESPN pops in and they do what they always do. And here's the deal. There are 2 regionals, 2 super regionals, I'm sorry, that are played during the week.
Yeah.
That would be Thursday, Friday.
Sure.
And that's not desirable. You'd love to have your games on the weekend, more like Friday, Saturday. And there's 2 of them, and guess where they are? One of them is Fayetteville, and the other is Stillwater. 2 small market TVs, so the ESPN people go, yeah, we'll stick them with the bad game times. I don't think the Thursday at 6 is too bad.
Yeah.
It is a weekday.
Yeah, I will say this before we jumped on here, because it was, you're right, it is 3, but they pushed it back to 6:30.
So
they just did that on Friday.
Now you're talking about the Friday game.
Friday's game.
Then that
happened like 10 minutes ago.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
So with those times, I think they're going to be all right for drawing huge crowds. And I just think Texas being here, I mean, come on. I mean, you don't need any inducement for that.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be like, I wouldn't be surprised to see people in those apartments, those dorm rooms across the street over by Bud Walton, people peeking out of windows, and maybe somebody figures out how to get on the roof of the basketball practice facility, and people in trees over at Fayetteville High School, those berm seats. It is a little weird to see some of those empty seats. I never got an explanation for that. Some of the fans are speculating that there were corporate tickets given out to some of those, and then they distributed it to people that didn't show up, that weren't kind of real engaged softball fans. So you had this spectacle of the huge crowd around the berms on the outfield, but then some empty seats in the prime seating, and that's disappointing. I don't know why we keep seeing that stuff.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because tickets and the way that tickets have been sold has been a very hot topic on social media, and you have both sides of money versus, loyalty to fans.
It's the same thing with baseball.
Yep.
Exactly. We've hammered that till we've hammered it into the ground. It is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. But it's going to be fun, man. They were talking yesterday if Texas, before we knew it was officially Texas, that hill that goes up to Fayetteville High School across the street is going to be packed with people, just because you can see great straight into the stadium.
So
but it's going to be fun.
If you want to watch the game in person, you'll be able to do it. You might be a little far back from the seats, or from the field, but you'll be able to see it.
Yeah, and it'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it. All right, Alex for Hogs 88 wants to know, is it possible that the high expectations that this fan base has for Razorback baseball is causing this team to crumble under the weight of the pressure to meet the high expectations?
I hope that's not it.
Yeah.
I would hope that when you come to Arkansas you come out of the portal, you come from junior college, you come out of high school, you know what you're getting. This is the best fan base in baseball. I'm convinced of it. They support this team like nobody else. And along with that comes high expectations, especially when you're considered a top 5 program and you started the season where you did. You had the season you had last year and the year before and the year before and all the College World Series. You just have to come in here knowing there's going to be high expectations.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's what it is, and I've been trying to come up with possible explanations. I don't know. One of it may be one of them. It may be a combination of things. I would say number one possibility is this team never was as good as we thought it was. You know, maybe it looked good on paper, especially with the hitting. They knew they were going to have some pitching issues, but the defense has been pretty good until lately. But maybe, you know, just weren't what we thought they were. That's one possibility. The other possibility was, and I've talked about this all year long because I've had friends and I've read this on social media. They've been ragging on the pitching all season long. I'm going, are you nuts? They've been nationally ranked in pitching most of the year. Even going into the Alabama series, I think they were 6th in the nation in ERA. Their ERA has not been a problem until that last game against Alabama. So maybe it was that this team was fine as long as the pitching was what it was. We know they won a lot of games where they just scored 3 runs, 4 runs, or whatever because the pitching was there. Suddenly, here's what's happened in the last, I would say, 3 weekends. I've seen scores where Arkansas has given up 7, given up 11. Then they give up the 16 or the 18 runs that they gave up against Alabama. So maybe the pitching is finally slipping. It is concerning to see what's happened to the starting rotation because that was pretty good most of the year. There was always inconsistencies with Hagen Smith and Jackson Wiggins, but man, trying to figure out what's going on with Connor Nolan is just a head scratcher. If you go to the middle of the season, they go to Florida, and he pitches a complete 7 innings for him. He goes 7 innings, 1 hit, no runs. Best performance of his career. And I'm thinking, man, this guy's getting better and better. He's going to be great by the end of the year. And he's gone backwards since then. And you know it's not character or anything like that. He's a great guy. It really hurts me to see this happening to him.
Yeah.
I want to be able to say good things and, you know, he's going to bounce back and all this, but I don't know. And the other two, they've just been inconsistent all year long. But that's the problem they have right now is the pitching. If that doesn't come back, then they're dead meat because I do think they're hitting a little better. And then what we've seen is when the pitching gets bad, I think those infielders lose focus some because we saw some uncharacteristic mistakes. The other thing I would say, I don't know how many people have noticed this, but when you're talking about wild pitches, a lot of people don't understand the difference between a pass ball and a wild pitch. And you had Casey Opitz back there last year blocking everything. Turner's not, he can hit, but he's not the catcher Opitz was. And he lets a lot of balls get past him. And I'm not the scorekeeper. I don't know whether you rule that a pass ball or a wild pitch. But I've seen some problems back there, even to the point where you have to wonder if Dave Van Horn might consider putting Leach back in at catcher and move Turner to DH. I don't know. He's got some decisions to make.
He does. So, yeah, you know, he goes back to the drawing board. He's going to figure it out. He's not oblivious that things are in a certain way. He didn't reveal
much to us in his press conference, and he doesn't have to. But, you know, they didn't do anything on Sunday. Today and tomorrow are their work days. And there's a lot of things you got to wonder. Does he change the starting rotation? He did in one instance, you know, in the Alabama series, mixed results. But maybe he does. Maybe he takes a Jackson Wiggins and says, okay, you can go 2 innings. I'll use you as a reliever. Maybe he says that about a Hagen Smith. I don't know. It's hard to say. But he's got some decisions to make with a lineup.
Yeah, he definitely does. Question for you, because I've seen a lot of this on social media as well. Could it be leadership?
Well, that's another possibility that you had Opitz in there as a stabilizing force, a longtime guy that everybody respected, and he got everything together all the time and kept it together. And you don't have that this year. But we would have to be over there to know that, and nothing like that has sort of emerged. Usually there's rumors and people talk, well, I heard this. I haven't heard anything like that.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I know a lot of fans are just kind of maybe grasping for what could go wrong, and then that was something that was thrown out there. And, you know, referring to the shot that DVH took when he called 10% of the fan base before the team left for Tuscaloosa, Steve asks, is this game the fans' fault too? Too much criticism causing the collapse at some point? The coaching staff has to look in the mirror and stop blaming fans.
You know, that was a bad look, and I don't know why DVH did that. I don't know if he will talk later on and say that was a mistake. It's never good to call out fans. Now, to be fair, he wasn't calling out all the fans. He was saying maybe 10% of them. We don't know what the incident was. There could have been social media things that players were passing around. You and I look at social media all the time. We've got a Pig Trail Nation Facebook page, we got a Twitter page, we got our own Twitter page and Facebook. I read that stuff all the time. And I see mostly people just questioning, well, why did this happen? They're not over the top bad. They're just, well, I think this, I think that. There are a certain number that get really nutso. These are the same people that go after you and me and other people on TV. What we've learned to do, what you have to be able to do, is just kind of ignore that. You don't want to get in an argument with those people, and you don't want to let that affect you and what you're doing. And I would hope that Dave Van Horn, if he wanted to talk about this, I think he should have talked about it within the team. If there were some guys upset about it, sit down and talk to them about it. I want to tell a quick story about my attitude about this. Junior in high school on a very good football team, won a lot of games. The next year we lost a big senior class. There were only 3 of us back from the junior class that had started, and all 3 of us were captains. And so we sat down in the spring and we took that responsibility seriously. We talked among ourselves. We called the team together before summer took place, and we said, you guys got to bust your butt this summer. You got to work. You got to come up here and lift. We're going to be up here to see that you do. You're going to have to run. And then in the August camp, we got to go hard. We got to work twice as hard as those guys last year because we're not as good. And we did, and I had no complaints, but we weren't winning games. We were coming close in a lot of them, but we only ended up winning 3 games. The fans, the old men around town were all over us. People say all the time, well, you didn't have social media back then. No, we had face-to-face media. Try taking your girlfriend to the movies on Saturday night, and you're walking down the sidewalk, and these people are making fun of you and telling your girlfriend, you don't need to be going out with him. He's a loser. And they did that to me one night, and when they started complaining and saying we weren't working hard, which I knew was false, I went off on them. I turned around and went off on a bunch of men that I had respected and grown up around. And my dad went off on me. And he called me into his office, and he said, you don't want this to happen. If you don't want to deal with this, quit the team, because that's the one way it won't happen. But he said, if you get up there and sit there with the rest of us, you're going to find something out. You know why we're frustrated? Because we can't do anything about it. You're down there. You can make things happen. You're in the good spot. We're in the bad spot. And he made me realize that no matter what happens, playing and being out there with your teammates is the best thing you can ever do in sports. So don't worry about it. Just blow all that other stuff off and deal with it. And I hope that's what they will do.
Yeah, we'll see how it all works. But gosh, man, something's got to give with baseball. Jacob Davis says this could be the wake-up call that Arkansas needed before the postseason play, or the actual team we've seen all year long is giving in. Dave Van Horn has some work to do.
Well, that's the thing we'll find out in a couple of days. Did they finally just say, we're tired of all this, we battled it, but the fans are not behind us anymore, we'll just give in to that? Or can they figure out what's wrong in 2 days and turn this thing around? But there's another possibility. You and I both know this. Baseball is so random. I mean, I go back to Mississippi State last year, went 2-0 in the SEC tournament, and their fans had to be going bonkers. Arkansas, I think, swept them last year in Starkville. Their fans had to hate that. And they were probably thinking, we stink. And then all of a sudden, they won the national championship.
Yeah.
So you just never know what's going to happen. Alabama was just going nowhere.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, they do this to Arkansas, so their fans are baseball is just random. And as randomly as Arkansas looked bad, maybe they can randomly look good again.
Yeah, again, man, that's the one thing I think that you can find some solace in with the game of baseball is it's unlike any other sport where you can have a quick turnaround. Football doesn't happen, basketball doesn't happen, but with baseball, you hit a stride. I mean, we've seen it in the World Series in the way that the Nationals went, and they went on a hot streak and they won, and the Braves got hot and they won. And I mean, it's such a wonky sport where anything can happen.
It could end up being a blessing if Georgia, if Alabama beats Georgia, that Arkansas plays Alabama again
for the 4th time in
totally
a week.
Turns that thing around.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
You don't know.
You just don't. And then that's the thing is we can sit here and talk to her blue in the face. We just have no idea. So, all right, Pig Daddy Kane has a solution to the RPI hit the Arkansas Razorback team is taking for playing in-state schools. He says, what if we play them all in a round-robin event at Dickey-Stevens? It would free up 4 games for us to play against other teams. A key part of that is being able to broadcast those games.
Well, the real problem with that, and that plan would be great for all those Central Arkansas teams because they'd be playing closer to home, wouldn't have to travel hardly at all. Some of them not at all. Euler, or I guess you can't say Euler anymore. Arkansas,
Little Rock.
And,
yeah.
But the others would be close, and they would be in front of big crowds, and it'd be great. The problem with that is that you can't do that once SEC play starts because you can't play 4 games, midweek games, and play 3 more on the weekend. It wouldn't work. So the only time that could happen is early in the season. And Dave Van Orn always has that already blocked out. Number one, they always play the opening series at home. That's establishing, hey, we're back, come out and watch us.
Except for that one time, like last year.
Yeah, but most of the time it's
right.
right here, and that's what they do. Then in week 2, the second weekend, they go on the road to some warm place because the weather's usually bad. So they go down to Texas, go to Arizona, go out on the West Coast somewhere, Louisiana. So that's out. And then, honestly, they're making money off baseball. They don't make that kind of money when they go to Little Rock. So they want this to be a part of their season ticket package. So those games, those weekend games after that trip, all the way up to conference play, are pretty much sold as a part of the TV package. I don't see them giving that up. So what you end up with is a game usually sometime in April at Dickey-Stevens, and it's usually 1 game, but it could be 2. They could play 2 midweek games there, but that's the best you're going to get. So it's a good idea for those teams.
Yeah.
It does. I don't think it would fit into Arkansas's plans.
Yeah. All right, Lanny wants to know whose side. I read these questions as you see them. Whose side are you picking, Mike? Nick? Jimbo? How you feel about the Aggies, of course, is a no-brainer.
Yeah, I don't like the Aggies, but my feelings on this don't have anything to do with that. I'm going to go with Saban.
Okay.
And I'm going to go with Saban because I think he's accurate. Now, people have said, well, he didn't really accuse A&M of cheating. I don't know what he was accusing them. I'm accusing him of that because people are ignoring the fact that there is an NIL rule. There's an NCAA rule against offering an NIL package to a player before they sign, and I think that's what they did. We'll see. I think the NCAA is going to step in and investigate Tennessee and Texas A&M, and we'll see what happened. But the tip-off on this is that even though Greg Sankey, when they got in this little tiff with each other and he came in and censored both of them, what did he actually do? He then came back and issued a statement, I think last Friday or Saturday, where he basically said, look, this is not how NIL is going to work. We're not going to let it be that way. You can't just throw cash at people. And here's his quote. There are some concerning trends. We're not seeing name, image, and likeness activity. We're seeing just straight payments. And the second part of that, I think it's important that we recenter ourselves on what's supposed to be happening here and the desire to keep that activity out of recruitment to benefit young people economically, but to do so in a healthy way. In other words, NIL is fine, but don't use it to recruit. And it's real simple. You don't offer anybody any information on NIL until after they sign with you. And I think the NCAA a couple of weeks ago indicated in a statement that they're going to start investigating this. I think you're also going to see these NIL collectives outlawed. I think that's going to happen very soon. No NIL collectives. The NIL will be this. You sign with the school. The school tells you, go get yourself an agent. Here's a list of names of guys around here who will help you. And then it's up to you to get with your agent and get an NIL deal. But also I think they're going to go further and they're going to put some more rules in here. And one of them will be make sure it's a legitimate NIL and not a money grab. Let me give you a hypothetical. Billy Bob's used car lots could be anywhere. Billy Bob is a booster at a school. He's got 5 used car lots. He's a multimillionaire, and he's been advertising on TV forever, and he uses ex-coaches, ex-players, ex-NFL players to advertise his used car lot. And the NCAA goes in and looks at his records, and he typically pays somebody $50,000 to do 10 TV ads to run for a year. But then all of a sudden a quarterback shows up at that school and he's got an NIL deal with Billy Bob's used car lot, and they say that's $500,000. Well, wait a minute. Why are you giving him $500,000 when all these other guys got $50,000? Nope. That's a money, you're just throwing money at him. That's not legitimate NIL. People have said there's no way to police this. I don't think that's right. I think you can keep NIL, let players make money off of it, but let them do it legitimately and take it out of recruiting, and I think it can be done, and that's what he was saying. And Jimbo was way over the top. He came back and just insulted him in every way possible, ended up saying somebody ought to hit him upside the head. Are you serious?
Have you ever seen a head coach call a press conference the day after being called out by another coach?
No.
Like, that was wild.
It was very unique. You almost never see it. That's why Greg Sankey had to step in and say, okay, I'm reprimanding both of you guys, which is the equivalent of saying, all right, cut it out, boys, stop fighting. But again, Saban just leveled some charges. Jimbo came back and basically said, you're a crummy person. I know you. I work for you. You're a terrible person. People don't know what you're really like. And by the way, somebody ought to slap you upside the head. That's over the top. And here's the thing about this. Jimbo tried to act like, hey, we just got all these guys because we have a winning culture here. Are you kidding me? They had never signed more than 2 5-stars ever, okay? Number two, they're coming off their worst year ever in the SEC. They lost 4 games. They went 4-4, and they ended up in a 3-way tie for 3rd, but in the pecking order, they were all the way down at 5th. And they got a crummy bowl bid as a result of it, which they turned down or backed out of because they didn't want to go to it, even if they claimed it was COVID. So they had a terrible year by A&M standards. And you're going to tell me that because of that, they had a winning culture which allowed them to sign 7 5-stars. No school has ever signed 7 5-stars. There's only about 30 of them. And you're going to get 25 to 30% of them in one class. It's never happened before. Give me a break. We know what happened. They had the numbers of anywhere 19 to $40 million. Nobody knows what that collective was. But it came from an NIL collective. And they got this money, and they brought this class in. I hope they enjoy it, because I don't think there's going to be another one like it. And the bottom line is, you wait till these 2 teams play. I will sit here and tell you right now, Alabama is going to murder them. Alabama is going to murder A&M next year. Jimbo will be walking around going, do.
That game is in Tuscaloosa, too, because they played at Kyle Field last year and lost. Alabama did.
Alabama lost. They're going to be mad. It was a fluky game. A&M used that game to walk around and talk. They talked about how we're going to the national championship this year. We're going to win the SEC. And then they
lost LSU.
They ended up collectively 5th out of 7 teams in the SEC West.
Yeah.
A team that was going to go to the national championship.
Man, like this stuff was nuts. All right, keep it going, because Blood Red Hawk says, have you seen into past SEC media days anything close to what we just witnessed between Jimbo and Saban? I had my popcorn out.
You know, they were together at LSU, and apparently I read a thing today that said they didn't get along back then. They didn't like each other. They argued all the time. So fine.
So he left,
I'm told that in some ways Saban, he's not like Petrino in terms of motorcycle and chicks and things like that, but that Saban is very much Petrino-like in that he don't get along with anybody. It's my way or the highway. I'm grumpy. Get out of my way, okay? Okay, fine. He's not a warm and friendly, fuzzy guy, but he's won 7 national championships. And I'm just saying, Greg Sankey stepped in and he reprimanded them. It reminds me of the $250,000 that Arkansas had to pay for rushing the floor after the Auburn game. You're paying, but you just did the SEC a huge favor. This fight is the best thing that could happen to SEC football. Are you kidding me? They're going to talk about it all year long on all the networks. That game is going to be talked about until they played it. It's probably going to be the highest ranked regular season game probably in a long time. It's going to be anticipated, and I'm going to be watching it. And I'm going to be watching the Aggies get run back to College Station. I'm going to become a Bama fan that night.
Woo, okay. Mousetown says, Saban, Fisher, Kiffin, they all were popping off last week. Glad our head coach was silent. Appreciate Big Sam more and more every day. He just does his job.
Do you think he was just sitting back laughing at all this?
Yes.
Just grinning like a Cheshire cat? Because it wasn't just those 2. Lane Kiffin got in the middle of all that to the point where Greg Sankey had to tell him, no, you cannot go on radio. You can't do that. Stop. You can't pop off. Little Dinky Wits made some statements. Up there in Missouri, they were all popping off. Steve Spurrier got involved in this thing.
God, but Steve just doesn't have anything better to do.
I know, but all these guys are back there popping off, and Sam Pittman's just sitting there going, I'm just coaching my team. We're just getting better. Let them do this.
What's the little Kermit the Frog meme where he's just sipping his tea?
Yeah, we're just doing this. We're just getting better every day, bringing in guys in the portal and making our plans, and we're going to be fine. I love it. Sam Pittman is so cool.
Oh, yes, you love it. All right, Rob's 4516 asks, what are your thoughts on how the wide receivers and the passing game will do this fall without Burks?
The problem with that, and I think of fans, we've talked about this before, I think they didn't get if they tuned into that indoor scrimmage to kind of get an idea of the passing game, they didn't come away with a good opinion of the receivers at all. And we've talked about it. It was dark in there. It's hard to see. It's not a place you want to display your passing game. I didn't get to see I think there was one outdoor scrimmage that the media was allowed to go to, and you had me doing something else, so I didn't see it that day. But I've talked to some people. Well, I don't remember what it was, but it was okay. But I talked to some people there, and they were really impressed with the wide receivers.
Yeah.
Including Malik Hornsby said he did a great job coming out of the slot as a receiver. So I think they're going to be fine. How do you replace Treylon Burks? You're not going to have a person that's going to be him because he's a first-round draft choice and he's going to be good in the NFL. So you're not going to have that. But they got all these guys. I'm going to sit here and just rattle their names off. Jaden Hazelwood, the OU transfer, who was I think he was a 5-star in high school. Jaquaylin Crawford, who's very good. Ketron Jackson Jr., good. Warren Thompson, we saw what he could do last year. This freshman, Isaiah Satanga, out of Fayetteville High School.
Yeah.
The thing I like about him is I could see them putting him in the slot. I worry about with his size, him getting controlled maybe off the line of scrimmage, but if you put him in the slot and come out with speed, I mean, they can't do anything to him there.
He's fast.
And this guy's not just fast, he can move left, right, stop, start. And he's got good hands, so I think he's going to make a really big impact. And then they also added a former Georgia wide receiver, Matt Landers, out of the portal. So you throw all those guys together and with K.J. Jefferson, they're going to have a good passing game. I'm not worried about it. I just think fans got a bad impression of what was going on because of that indoor scrimmage in the dark.
Yeah. For sure. All right. Eddie Lynn wants to know, is the new rule lifting the 25 scholarship limit for football in a single season a good thing or a bad thing?
It's only temporary. I think I remembered reading it was like 2 years they're going to do this. It's a kind of a temporary thing to see if the portal settles down a little bit. But here's what's happening, and I do think it's a good thing. Every year you lose X number of players to graduation. Okay. Doesn't matter what the number is. You lose X number. And that's what you use to get back to your 85 scholarship limit.
Right.
But if you lose, now you theoretically are not going to lose 25 guys to graduation, but let's say you lose 20, and then you lose 9 more in the portal. All of a sudden, with the 25 limit, you end up short of your 85 scholarship limit. And there are some schools that have been caught kind of with that happening to them, and it's not right. Now, I think ultimately the portal's they're going to do something with that. This unlimited, you just transfer, it doesn't matter. After a one-time unlimited transfer, it's causing too many problems. It's gotten all mixed up in NIL and all that. I wouldn't be surprised to see that rule change. But for right now, if you're going to have this one-time transfer, anybody can leave, I don't see any other way to deal with this situation than to take away that 25 limit. Because what difference does it make, honestly, in the long run? As long as you don't go over the 85 scholarship limit, what difference does it make how many you bring in 1 year?
Yeah, we'll see. But, yeah, it's always interesting how this works. All right. Pig's Feet says, there were times that I thought Trey Williams was unstoppable outside of being held. How in the world was he not drafted?
You know, he had a couple of off-the-field incidents, and that always comes into play with the NFL. One of them happened in Missouri. One of them happened here. So that might have had something to do with it. His numbers at the combine weren't what the numbers that they were quoting going in, and I think they looked at that and went, wait a minute, his 40 time's not what we thought, his vertical jump's not what we thought. Okay, he's not quite the athlete we thought he was, so I think that hurt him. And then just reading some of those draft combine reports, I think that they felt like he had a problem with his hands in pass rushing. He needed better technique with his hands. And then I think they felt like as a run stopper, a tackler stopping the run, he needed work. So I think all of those things combined to cause him not to be drafted.
All right, last question of the day. Team Otis asked, Mike, did you ever meet Patrick Beverley? What do you think of Pat Bev's comments about Chris Paul? What did you think of him when he played at Arkansas? And do you foresee him having a long and successful career?
Yeah, of course I knew him. He was here. You know, I covered him.
Yeah.
You know, you're not around players a lot. You don't talk to him a lot. My impression of him at the time was he was kind of quiet. He did not pop off the way he does right now. He had a coach. And usually college guys don't go around making controversial statements in the media. If they do, the coach calls him in and says, don't say that anymore.
Yeah.
So he didn't do a lot of that. But he was, as a player, kind of in your face, what you get is what I am. If you don't like it, too bad. He did that. Now, he was only here a couple of years, and I had no clue. I didn't think he was going to make it in the NBA because, first of all, he went to Europe. You know, he wasn't in the NBA. He went to Europe, and I thought, okay, he's a 5 or 6 guy in Europe, and then he'll have to figure out what else he's going to do. But his career has been in fours. Like, he was in Europe for 4 years. Then he got into his first team with the NFL for 4 years, and then another team for 4 years, and then he's been here 1 year with this team. Now, Chris Paul, I think he got into something, he shoved him maybe at the end of last year, and then the suspension carried over to this year, so they clearly don't like each other. He admitted that what was controversial about what he said, I think he said this to Stephen A. Smith, but I can't remember, but he basically said he can't play defense. And then he kind of came back and said, well, yeah, he can play defense. He's just not as good as the media says he is. And this is what you would expect from a guy that doesn't like another guy. That's what you're going to do.
Yeah.
So I don't have any problem with what he said. I think it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
You know,
hey, Patrick Beverley cracks me up.
Yeah, he's
I also
hilarious.
think, too, like, when you talk about was he this mouthy? No, but I think when you look at how successful he's been defensively as a defensive player, he's been able to say some stuff, and it fits his personality that his NBA kind of mantra has created a little bit. You have some tenure in the league now, and now you can say some things you couldn't say when you were, like, you know, a rookie or something.
13 years in pro ball. He goes all the way back to when Stan Heath was fired. That's like forever. 13 years in pro ball, 9 years in the NBA. If you had told me he had been a 9-year NBA guy, and I mean, he's still there, he's not going anywhere, I'd be like, you're nutso. He's a decent college player, but no, that's not happening. So we always talk about you can't predict how a kid's going to transition from high school to college, from college to pro ball. You don't know. He's an example of a guy that you couldn't see. He was a good college player, but you couldn't see him being this kind of a pro. And then, wow, look, he comes into his own as a pro player.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it took him about 4 years to really make it happen.
Yeah, and man, is he entertaining to watch, especially during the postseason. All right, great group of questions this week, Mike. Looking forward to more with softball regionals and, of course, SEC baseball starting with the tournament this week as well, so it should be fun. Thanks so much for joining us on this week's Ask Mike. We'll see you next week.